Education and empowerment for small businesses. Education and empowerment. You got two subcontracts, yeah, but not so low that the people don't have space to write. Okay. So, but we want to talk about the two areas, one, which is community based, or do you want to reword that? Contractor based to small and diverse businesses. And contractor based organization. Right. Thank you. Yeah. And then what did you cover?
I think it's empowerment for small businesses.
No, it's okay. Someone else did it too.
Oh, did they? Okay. Well, you and Megan have similar hair today.
We do.
Yeah.
No, we always have our
Okay.
hair is, we have sister locks, and so
Oh, okay.
it's why people, I think, and we're tall and we're the same color.
Right,
Yeah.
same build. Yeah, okay, good.
Megan is okay. Me.
Oh, is she?
Okay, thanks.
I'm happy to rewrite that if that's not gonna get people on stage.
Terrible.
So
Oh, okay.
that would not surprise me actually, but others do.
East, 20, like East Side turns into 20 seconds.
Okay.
Like that, are you from there?
No, I work down there, but
I'm about 7.
the insurance company. Oh, okay, well, nice. I look for you at
You don't
lunch.
have lunch with Bob?
No,
Oh,
no, I can have lunch with him anytime.
I didn't know where you went.
Well, I know I was looking for you too. I'm sorry.
I was like, oh, she probably went to have lunch with her hubby.
No, no.
Okay, Maria.
Mark, you need some help?
No, I'm just.
I never get to see Monica and Katie. Does anybody want a minute?
I would love a minute.
When you're on camera, right?
Thank you.
Sure.
I haven't had an Altoid in it. I know, they're, my son used to call these, say, Mom, can I have one of those mints that knock your socks off? I don't know. I don't think so. I think these are just curiously strong is their line.
Yeah.
They used to make the mini ones. Yeah. My dad, all about it.
My husband used to be so hooked on Altoids, but now he buys those mints with the Z.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Those are.
But they're hard to find though.
Oh, are they?
And I think even Trader Joe's stopped carrying them. Oh, no,
think
I guess we-
Thank you. Thanks for
Oh.
coming. Yes.
Are they those see-through that are broken up into a tin?
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But
The mints, those aren't
people
mints.
like.
Those are-
Those are just different candies. Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm thinking
about ice drops.
And we're gonna put this out this morning so that if we have new people who wander in, then.
My dad
can. How was your lunch?
Because
Did you-
I-
Yeah.
It's all on your. Right. Wow. Years.
Yeah. Have some allergies, so I'm excited to have. Cause I attend a lot of conferences.
One of my son's teachers, parent teacher,
So then I'm
so
like
she would just
scrounging
eat
and
Altoid,
find.
like the whole,
Yeah.
like, she'd eat like, I know. And we
grab
just
one of
be
these.
sitting there just
I have,
more mesmerized, by that than listening to what she was saying. to her kid.
Oh, yeah.
All the things.
Yeah, no,
So I want to
everything-
learn a little more about a day in the life and kind of what you're up to and
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
I can
Sausage
show my,
can't be trusted.
Wait, let me
Aioli,
yeah, no, that's fine. I'll give you my card.
like. No, so I can eat like regular like dill pickles, but like I can't do like. Other pickle things.
No pickled green beans in Bloody Marys.
No.
Oh,
No, no.
Like, every alcoholic drink, mixed drink in America has a citrus in it. So like, if you ever been to a bar that you have like.
Lime or a
lime, and then you have
True.
like.
if it doesn't, the bar does not
Yeah,
care about the temperature.
they don't. So that's always fun and creative.
Beer and wine. I guess that's what you're.
Well, actually, a lot of rum and coke.
Oh, okay, well, there you go.
You might know I got that.
That was interesting.
Wine in it.
You have to preserve the pens, you know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That must be hard to navigate.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially if I go someplace like, there was a conference in Florida and there was literally like key lime.
Yes.
And
Oh, sure.
yeah, let's go. Let's put some limes in it. Our mango chicken and horseradish.
Yes.
Mustard covered this and it was, oh my goodness. I was like, man, I'm gonna eat the stuffed mushroom. Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's 1:06.
Where is everybody?
Yeah. So, okay, we're as much smaller as
All right, what do you guys do?
So the four,
Yeah.
Nina, the four measures are education, empowerment,
Internal,
got it.
education and empowerment, external,
Oh.
reduce barriers for contracting, and increase state awarded contracts plus bid. I'm gonna give people like 3 more minutes. Like maybe someone went to grab coffee, some folks went to grab coffee.
I'm not sure if people realized that it was gonna be a two-part.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the agenda is for.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that's okay.
No, Katie and Monica went to session.
Means a lot less yelling.
Do we have some new people on the phone or on the Zoom today after lunch? I see some new names. Can you all hear me?
Somebody's typing.
Do you need the?
Oh, someone's typing in.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Someone new only because, okay, all right. Welcome, Jeanette. Anyone else new?
I am.
Hi, Ed. Ed, do you want to introduce yourself since we're kind of waiting for more people to come in?
Sure. Ed Maynard. I'm with the Department of Social and Health Services. And I typed in chat that I thought this was going to be 2 separate sessions. So I signed up for this one as my second session.
Got it.
But it's a continuation from the morning.
It is.
You can sit in.
Yeah.
But we're gonna recap this morning.
We're gonna do a recap too.
Okay.
Jeanette, did you want to come off mute and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Jeanette Rosebrook and I'm a specialist up at Western Washington University.
Hi, Jeanette. Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Anyone else new to the group?
I'm Maria Rogers from Department of Health, and I as well as Ed thought these were 2 separate as well. So yes, I'm new to this one.
Okay, that's okay. Any other new people?
Okay, so we're gonna get this party started. Let me get the mic.
Do anybody want coffee?
Okay, all those who are new,
I'll bring it to you.
I'm gonna go ahead and recap kind of what we went over this morning. What we were talking about here in public contracting is kind of following the governor's roadmap to diversity, equity, and inclusion here, and how that pertains to public contracting. And where we are in this roadmap is to increase how we standardize race and gender neutral measures. And again, to kind of go over with you the difference between race and gender neutral measures compared to race and gender conscious measures. We're just going to say race neutral, race conscious. That's kind of how we say it in the industry, and it's a little less of a mouthful. And that our race neutral measures are essentially those contracts that we award to small and diverse businesses that do not set hard goals. And by a hard goal, that means you must meet the goal as a condition of you being awarded that contract. Or if you fail to meet the condition of award, you have to submit a good faith effort. So we like to think of the race and gender neutral measures as the voluntary measures. The flip side to that is when you kind of think about our disadvantaged business enterprise. The disadvantaged business enterprise is a race and gender conscious program, and that it is that way because you must qualify as a disadvantaged business enterprise. In order to qualify as a disadvantaged business enterprise, you must meet that requirement based on your race and gender. So think of it, race neutral, it's voluntary, race conscious. You must meet this condition in order to be awarded a contract. So what we did this morning is kind of explore the different measures that we could utilize in order to standardize our race and gender neutral measures, and not only standardize them, but increase them. One of the fun things we did was take a trip this morning. Not we were going how long we were going for. And surprisingly enough, everyone packed everything they needed to go on the trip once I told them where they were going. A little minor tweak, but for the most part, people knew they needed some cash, probably gonna need some clothes. You know what I mean? You might need to take care of your kids or your pets at home, and that's exactly how contracting is. And that's the way that you really start that race and gender neutral measures is 110% about relationships. It's about having good relationships with the small business community. It's about having good relationships with your prime contractor community. Because we like to do things for the friends. Anybody have like a favorite auntie? I have my favorite aunties. When my favorite auntie asks me to do something, I do it because she's my favorite. Like, I need you to look at me as your favorite auntie. So that when I set a goal, you can't wait to meet. Like, I'm not even going to meet a goal. I'm going to exceed the goal. I'm going to blow Nina's mind. Like, you. And that's really kind of how you drive that race neutral participation. It's about that creating that relationship. And it also means that our small businesses, as kind of Dr. Powell said, have a sense of belonging. They're not just invited to the party, but they also are driving the decision to the party. And that means that those people are in front of the decision makers. As the big wallets in the room, we got to make sure that our small business communities are talking to the decision makers here. That the decision makers here know that I'm doing more than just throwing a number at them. And that aspirational goal or a voluntary goal does not mean no goal. Because sometimes we interpret it that way as well. Like, oh, it's voluntary. So, but what do we put how do we incentivize? You know what I mean? Like, are we incentivizing our contractors based on being on time and under budget? Because like we all love those. We love those phrases in the construction industry. Let's be on time and under budget. But is being on time under budget at the sacrifice of getting small business participation? Because maybe it costs a little bit of more money to do business with small businesses. Maybe it takes a little more time. But where's our value lie? And so that's kind of where we're going to start to take a deeper dive this afternoon. Is as we have the 4 measures that we came up with this morning, which were education and empowerment externally. And this means to our small businesses, to our prime contractors. And then we have our education and empowerment internal, which means to diversity practitioners, like people like us at the agency who do this work. Our prime contractors also who have project managers, our diversity representatives. You see this a lot of time with our large firms. They have a diversity manager who is supposed to manage it. But how do we educate and empower internally? I had a good conversation with one of our Department of Commerce. That's who we're missing. We're missing the Department of Commerce. A good conversation with one of our Department of Commerce persons who says, like, I do the outreach, I've created outreach, I've got this great tool to do outreach, but how do I get the buy? When it goes up top. So that's one of those things that you guys got to do a deeper dive in when you talk about education and empowerment internally. How do we not only educate our diversity practitioners, but how do we meet those kind of people in the middle? A lot of times you notice in the chief suite, they're all about education and diversity. Let's get these numbers, let's go. You see us people working on the ground, like we're passionate about it, but sometimes you got kind of get that middle range who are on time and under budget. I like to think about this like going to a steak restaurant. Don't just drop a steak in front of me and say, here you go. No, I paid for some potatoes and a roll and I want a drink. And like, when you just hand me the steak, have you met the requirement? Yes, but I'm not gonna leave satisfied. So like, let's make sure that we're educating so that people know that the goal of compliance, the business of compliance, we take it serious. So, increased state award contracts and spend, that's to our small and diverse businesses. But also to our contractor-based organizations. And these are those organizations that provide the support services, that provide the mentor, protege programs and technical assistance to our small business community. And then last but not least, reduce barriers for contracting. Because it's really a consistent thing when you're out there. It is hard work to work with the government. But they should know that when they do become small and diverse certified businesses, that they're a golden ticket. And that small, like our large businesses should be like hungry for these businesses because we're setting the goal. And we're making it a requirement to do business with our agencies. So those are the 4 things you're going to start to take a deeper dive in. But before we do that, let's shake it up a little bit and do a little icebreaker. For our people online, we can hear you, so just shout it out as the people in the room. What you listening to? What's on your playlist? There's no wrong answer.
Christmas.
Christmas.
KUOW for Kate Bush.
Okay. Maybe what song gets you pumped in the morning? Sometimes you need that song that gets you motivated.
Don't rain on my parade, Barbara Streisand.
I love it.
Old soul right here.
Let's get this party started.
Yes.
I listened to a little bit of Maverick City Music. It's a gospel
Okay.
group that they came to this Tacoma Dome in the summer, and
Yeah.
I just can't stop.
Yeah.
It gets me going.
My sister went to their concert when it came to Portland. She loved it. Anybody else? What's on your playlist? Or what song you tired of hearing? Can you say, I don't care no from all our Christmas is here? Like, the minute I hear that song, I'm tired of that song.
Preteens put on the radio.
Yeah.
106.1.
Yes.
Seattle.
I was gonna say, I haven't.
10-year-old, it's like anything by Harry Styles. Done.
I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, so I'm gonna say the Frozen song.
No, I'm so sorry.
And not even Let It Go. My son is obsessed with the opening song with the guys harvesting the ice.
Yeah.
I listen to that 3 times a day.
Yeah. A 5-year-old. That's a whole bunch of, we don't talk about Bruno.
Oh, yeah.
I say, you know the times I say in content? Let me tell you. I was learning to play it on the piano. That's what he told his piano teacher.
No.
The song he wanted to learn for the year was We Don't Talk About Bruno. So now my husband's learning it. So now everyone's playing it. Yeah.
All right, I have a couple on the chat. Paige Morris says Chris Stapleton. And Susan Peterson says Lizzo and Beyonce.
Hey.
I have a great, I don't ever want to hear it again.
Yeah.
1877 Cars for Kids.
Good jingle.
So jingle.
So sorry.
We got it out.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so this afternoon, we're kind of gonna thank you all for participating and sharing what was on your playlist. One of the things that we're, like I said, we're getting ready to dive into is what we're looking for you to do. Just for the next, we're gonna say maybe 30 to 40 minutes, is please choose a measure. And like, start to set some metrics by which you think this measure would apply to this, to each of these measures. And let me give you an example because I know that sounded kind of hard there. Okay, what's this one? I'm gonna take increase, this one, which one? Oh, here we go. The increased state awarded contracts and SMIT. So what are some of the metrics that we could utilize to dive deeper into increasing state awarded contracts spent? It may be the percentage of contracts that go to those, to those businesses. It could be the diversity of the contractors and those spends. It also could be the dollar amount. And by diversity, I don't mean race and gender diversity. Sorry, let me clarify that. By diversity, I mean like, do we have one small business contractor that's getting $1 million contract? Or do we have 4 small business contractors who are getting $250,000 contract? So that's what I mean by, not only are we looking at the percentage of dollars we're spending with small businesses, are a couple, 2 or 3 larger small businesses getting all the work, and there's some smaller ones who are like, yeah, you're meeting your goals, but you're meeting your goals with one contractor. There's a agency down in the Portland area who gets 20 to 25% participation race neutral. And like, it's blowing everyone's mind. And I'm like, they've had the same prime contractor for 15 years.
Exactly.
Like, this one prime contractor knows how to, this one prime contractor knows how to do business.
Yeah.
But what does your split look like with your other primes?
Exactly.
Like, how is their percentage getting? Like, yeah, you're meeting the numbers, and everyone's like, oh, wow, and their program doesn't even have any teeth. Like, yeah, but they've used the same prime on every project, every big project. And you know who that prime uses? The same subcontractor. Right? So that's kind of what that's one of the things that we could be looking at with regards to that. It could be the dollar amount. So not only just the percentage of your contracts awarded, how you're awarding those contracts, the dollar amounts of those contracts that are being awarded. And you can use some of those same metrics when you're looking at how you're awarding contracts to contractor-based organizations. So if you could just pick a measure, and for our folks online, you have your choice. There's 4 of them. So maybe everyone throw in the chat if you want 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm not sure how they're listed, but majority wins. People online, so you can go ahead and vote. And then as you look at each of your measures, and you may look at some of the metrics that we started with on those papers, because those are some of the things that you could put underneath each one as well. And I'm going to circulate around the room and look at how you're doing and assist as well. If everyone could just choose a measure, go and write some stuff down. All right, does that sound good? Anyone have any questions? No? Okay. I just like that one.
I have a list.
She's like, come with me. I have the answers to this. Yeah. Oh, yes, you can. And I'll share with you all some of this stuff. So. I know this is like extra. Right.
Huh? Okay, I'm just gonna go out into the. Thank you.
You're afraid? Yeah.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so I'm back in the hallway here. It looks like only a couple of you voted. I see a vote for 4. I see 1 for 3. Anyone else?
I was thinking of 4 as well.
Okay, another 1 for 4. Okay, 4 is winning so far.
I'm
All right, I think 4 is 1. So if you click on the link in the chat, there's another Padlet. It's actually the same Padlet that we used earlier. Hi, Irene, good to see you. If you click on that link in the chat, okay, hold on. We're gonna do measure number 4, right? Which is increase state awarded contracts and spend. All right, hold on, I lost my screen here. Hold on 1 second. There we go. All right, measure number 4. So the first thing that we need to do is think about what metric we want to use, like a SMART goal for that one. Anyone have any suggestions for a SMART goal for increasing state awarded contracts and spend? Is there not already a goal for that the governor put out, like a 10% to get to 10%?
The goals are set, and those are put out and they're incorporated under OMWBE. So the goals are already there. So
Okay.
there's no point in doing anything to set goals because that's already been mandated.
Is there another goal that we could create?
I would look at the number of contracts that have been awarded to firms. That would be one thing I would look at because OMWB already collects the utilization, the percentage. But what that doesn't tell us is how many contracts are actually going to firms, are going to MB firms. And it also doesn't represent the dollar value of those contracts.
That's true.
And the reason I share this is that years ago when I was at OMWBE, we saw a trend, and that was when we saw the number of contracts increase awarded to WIMBY firms. The dollar value average per contract decreased. So we didn't see these gains. What we saw was smaller contracts being awarded, in some cases to the same firms over and over and over again. So what you want to do is dive into beyond what OMWBE is already is collecting. So it's how many firms, different firms are getting work, and what's the dollar value of those contracts. And I would be looking at the mode, the mean, and the median, because if you just take the mean, it doesn't tell you anything. You need to know if it's because of one large contract or a gazillion small ones. So if you look at the 3 averages, it'll tell you a better story.
I like that. That's a good suggestion. What other suggestions do people have? Irene, do I see your hand up?
Yes, indeed.
All right.
I've lived the experience of bidding, right? So I kind of know what are the real challenges. And for 30 years, this is my bread and butter, bidding on contracts. And what I have recognized, the biggest challenge is always, what are the metrics when you do measurements? We got to be very concise with the metrics. So you can measure a lot of things, and people try to measure, only what they want to hear. But let's be realistic in how we measure. First, Vicky was right, is measure how many participated or how many were awarded the contract, right? But this is the most important thing. You can say we awarded 100 contracts to minority businesses. The bottom line is, have they been utilized? Have they been used? I'll tell you, one agency awarded me a contract. It's not the state, outside. It stayed there for 10 years. I have a blanket contract. I was supposed to supply them safety and medical supplies. I never got utilized. That's the most important thing for me, is make sure that we create measurements of accountability. When they say they do this, or when they say they'll measure this, what are the next steps to make sure that they're in line? And also, you know, someone has to really monitor them. We can always say we're measuring, but until someone is really auditing them and measuring them, we are still on base one.
So Irene is totally on the mark. So what you've got is a sequential thing that you will see in construction that is required of the primes to demonstrate for good faith efforts and all that. And state agencies need to do the same. And that is, you track your solicitation pool, who responded, then of those who responded, who got awarded, and then how did you actually spend money with them? And on on-call contracts, and particularly with vendor contracts, that's always the problem. And then looking at what are you doing collectively? And I think the other thing is there's a trend. Those contracts or solicitations that have inclusion plans are more likely to have inclusion and higher inclusion than those that don't. So if we are silent on inclusion plans, you're missing the boat. And that's particularly true for consultants and for construction.
And it's
Thank
not
you.
only good for construction, it's really for goods and services, right? For supplies as well. It's the same problem that we have. And the fact of the matter is, they know how to deflect information or for lack of a better word, they know how to circumvent the system without making the agency look that they're not doing the right thing. And I've been doing this 30 years. I'm just being very honest. If we really need to change things, it has to come from the bottom of our hearts. It's shifting mindsets of buyers, of people that are influential and official in making those decisions of procurement.
Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Vicky.
I have a milestone to add to the list.
Okay.
Because I think it falls here. And that is which agencies have subjected their solicitations to a race and gender neutral analysis. Now, what does that mean? That means that what is race biased are solicitation criteria that requires firms to have done business with that agency previously, or give bonus points or higher scores for having done business with agencies. What you've done is you've eliminated all of your WIMBY firms right almost from the start. So when I worked at the state, that's what I put the agencies that I was with, that's what we did. We did a race and gender neutral analysis on all of our solicitations and reworked all of the solicitations to eliminate that language and those requirements. So if you don't have a milestone of did you do this and how many did you do, then you're not going to change the outcome. And I really do object to blaming the victim, which in this case is the WIMBY firms who don't get picked, about they're too ignorant to compete and that's why they're not winning, when in fact they're being prevented institutionally from winning projects.
Okay, I did add that. Thank you, Vicky and Irene. Is there anyone else that would
Can I
like to
add-
jump
can
into the hold on one second, Irene. I just want to make sure that we get other people who may want to jump in. Is there anybody else that would like to add to the metrics or any comment about what's been spoken about so far?
Hey, Lenore, this is Carl with Resilient Learning Solutions. And I appreciate what you brought up, Irene. I have the blessing and opportunity to be serving on the BDAG at this point. And last month, we sort of surfaced and touched on what you were speaking about. So I'll be glad to circle back around and bring that to the team again. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I see Tracy's hand.
Hi, Lenore. This is Tracy Brown with Equity Leadership Collaborative. I just need a clarification on the comment regarding whether or not under the MWBE firms process, are we asking for a race neutral analysis? Is that the recommendation? Are we asking for a race neutral analysis, or are we doing an equity or disparity study and looking at the trends over time? And based on the disparities, are we then looking at that data to identify whether it's race neutral, or we're looking at that data and identifying whether it should be race conscious because of the data? So I'm just trying to get an idea of what the recommendation is versus just the blank race neutral.
Yeah, let me clarify what I was saying. The disparity study looks at things like payment cycles. It looks at access to capital and a variety of other elements based on interviews and data and so on. What I'm speaking to is something disparity studies don't look at, and that is when you put a solicitation out, is it inherently racist from an institutional or systemic basis or not? So an example of that is I evaluate a firm based on how big it is or how long it's been in business, rather than looking at the skill set alignment and the qualifications of the individuals that will perform on the project. So I'm giving points to being the big gorilla in the room, who may be giving me the worst people, rather than the quality of the folks that are going to execute the work. And these kinds of criteria are systemically used by many jurisdictions as the criteria, and then they can't understand why they keep getting the same folks over and over and over again. And it's because the criteria is biased in a more subtle way than some of the obvious things. That analysis is never part of a disparity study. So what I'm talking to is, besides the disparity studies that are being done, that agencies look at their actual solicitation language. Are you asking for the most qualified in some cases, where you can, where you're looking for best value, or are you scoring the biggest, or are you looking for the biggest gorilla in the room to do your project? So that's the distinction I'm making, because when you start to look at what you really need and not what you think you need, the outcomes are dramatically different. And that's from my past professional experience when I was with the city of Seattle. I was the contracts division director for Seattle Public Utilities, and we turned it on a dime, and no one else has been able to touch what we've done or replicate it, because what we did was we changed the language of the solicitation.
Well, I think it's important to change the language of the solicitation, but I'm not sure the way you're describing it does that, because all of the numbers are demonstrating that, and have been over time, that people of color, especially African Americans, the numbers continue to be, the spend continue to be low, especially after I-200. Moreover, the larger gorillas who continue to get the contracts are based on the relationships. And if they do utilize WIMBYs, especially MBEs, many times what we were finding is they were equally qualified, if you use that terminology, out there. But what happened is once they got the contract, they would then switch and put someone else on the contract. And it may not necessarily be the MBE firm or the WIMBY firm that initially started. Moreover, what was happening is they were not doing prompt pay And then the MBE program, the MBE person could not get their money on time. That was another way for them to fall off the contract. And finally, I think I think I heard that the young lady, Irene Iris said earlier about compliance and internal monitoring and making sure that those firms are, that they utilize in those solicitations and gets points to hire those firms. And they're saying that their team who's been brought on board, that we hold them to that. And then lastly, I would like to say that where you have firms who continually get large dollars, especially in these large construction contracts, where there's millions and millions of dollars come in, and we see that there may have been a pipeline where there may not have been historically people of color who've been able to participate on those, then there needs to be a mentoring protege program that they bring somebody on board or a series of contractors on board and build that pipeline from an equity lens. I'm not seeing a whole lot of that, especially if folks are getting millions and millions of dollars consistently. And so we know the historical issue of being denied access and opportunity to participate. But I think if a large firm continues to get those dollars, those solicitations should include that kind of language as well. So I'm not really for the race neutral, because I think the analysis, it depends on who's doing the disparity study as to what to include in it. I have seen historically there's been some missing pieces, and it may or may not been intentional, but that's not the disparity studies that I've done or seen. They're much more intentional, and they demonstrate the trends over time in terms of the spend, along with some of the other programs that I'm mentioning. So I just think historically that the numbers are really clear over a 10, 15, 20-year period where the dollars are actually going.
I agree with what you're saying. I'm saying that in addition to that, and this is particularly impactful for architects and engineers, because it's based on best value. It's not based on price.
Yes.
The solicitation language is absolutely critical. And I'm happy to share with you my data that I have that accumulated for almost a decade of what we did just by changing solicitation language.
I'm with you, Vicki, on that. The language is extremely important, and then just holding them to it.
Exactly.
But I don't know if it's a race neutral approach.
Well, whatever you call it, we changed the language for inclusion, and we got results as a basis of that, and we can call it whatever we want to. I call it that because that's what it was referred to historically. There's a question, Lenora.
Yeah, can you clarify what you mean by inclusion?
Yeah.
So if you could answer that one real quick, because I know we're kind of running out of time, and I see Irene's hand, I see Ed's hand.
So an inclusion plan is a government ask that is submitted with a package for firms competing that is asking them to reflect availability or utilization of firms that are normally not included on solicitations, so that we have diversity on the team. So it could be asking for small business inclusion, it could be asking for minority and women business inclusion, but it would be a document that is submitted and it's handled in a variety of different ways depending on the jurisdiction.
Thank you, Vicki. All right, Irene, go ahead.
Yeah, and if I may add to the definition of inclusion plan in simple language, we're going to award you this contract. You're talking to your bidder or submitter, right? How are you gonna include minority businesses in your contract? Enumerate. How are they going to perform the project? So that's the inclusion plan, is giving them the opportunity, because they're not a minority firm, or they could be a minority firm, and you just want to require them to include who are their subs, who are they going to do business with that will be minority businesses. And in that, as a follow-up to that, what I really wanted to do, express myself as well, is Yeah, we have an inclusion plan, whether it's in construction, goods and services, or any contract that the government puts out. The situation or the big challenge is, what are the consequences if they don't follow their inclusion plan? And same way with our agencies. What are the consequences if they failed to do it? What are the consequences if they just decide not to do it?
Right.
If there are no consequences, how are you going to implement your accountability or your measurements of accountability? They're just gonna say, oh, I could just get a ticket. I don't care. I don't go to jail. Right? So that's my problem. And I'm on CPAR board as well. And I was on the Small Business Input Committee. I co-chaired that. And the biggest barrier that we have identified is the language, because biases are very predominant in the contract language. And also we have conflicting language, and we also have conflicting procurement priorities. It confuses the agencies. It confuses the general contractor or the prime. Does that make sense? So thank you.
All right, Ed, go ahead.
Hi, Ed Maynard. I'm with Department of Social and Health Services. Two things real quick. One on the inclusion plans. They are fairly new to state agencies that are doing purchases or procurements for goods and services. Those are typically what you see a lot on public work projects is inclusion plans. And some of the terminology part is you guys are mentioning, getting other businesses. We look at it as subcontractors. So that's including subcontractors into those contracts where they might do that on their own. And that's encouraging them to do that. We want to see what they're doing on behalf of completing a project, who they're going to include into that project. So for state agencies, we refer inclusion plans to like subcontractors, like how are they going to engage with subcontractors? The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick is something that Vicki had mentioned, which is changing our procurement documents or solicitation documents. One of the things that DES, Department of Enterprise Services, released back at I think it was October, was the supplier diversity policy. And that has components in it to talk about unbundling, which has always been kind of against what contract professionals have been taught from the beginning, breaking up a larger contract to be more, cost effective and whatnot, breaking them up into smaller pieces so that small businesses can engage where maybe they can't do a full on, procurement because they don't have all those elements that they support. But maybe they focus on a certain area. So unbundling, that's a big thing with the policy that is going to be effective April 1st of 2023. So it gives agencies a little bit of time to kind of review their solicitation documents, review their processes that we have currently in place, and then provide, attend the trainings that are being sent out by DES. And one of the things they talked about was removing barriers from solicitation language, kind of what Vicki talked about with, everything from reducing insurance requirements, it's making them lower so they're more affordable for those small businesses, procurement bond usage, experience qualification minimum requirements, looking at taking those out of certain solicitations where they talk about, like, well, have you done business with other state agencies before, removing those requirements? Use of a specific manufacturer where we only want IBM or we only want this, to opening it up to where maybe they can compete because they have connections with another similar vendor, that instead of just going with one vendor only, because a lot of times those are sole or they have like special certifications where only large businesses can afford to to provide certain products. So those are being released, and that's something we're all going to be looking at in reviewing our solicitation language and making it more approachable and inclusive for these small businesses.
Thank you, Ed. So as a part of what we're supposed to do is we need to come up with one metric, and we have like 6. I didn't know if anyone had a chance to look at the Padlet. I can put the link in the chat again to see, is there one metric that should be kind of, that maybe has the most impact over the other one? And then once we decide on the metric, then we need to also apply like a lens regarding it. So does it kind of meet like a pro-equity lens or a universal access lens or belonging lens? There's a couple of questions that we need to answer for that. But first, we need to look at the metrics that we have listed to see if there's one that stands out over the other. I know we talked a lot about the inclusion plan. Is that one that everyone is thinking we should create a metric for? It sounds like it's not a requirement right now, so. Okay, Ed says, how many firms have been awarded contracts? It's hard because they're all really good ideas.
Lenore, can you add, what I think a clarification with what Ed stated from DSHS, that I think how many have inclusion plans or how many have subcontractor plans? So
how many firms have been awarded contracts that have inclusion plans? How about that?
Yes, or subcontractors that have inclusion plans, right? Yeah, because I think the subcontractor really refers to the goods and services. The inclusion plan refers to construction, if I may say.
Yeah, and professional services and consulting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to add one thing. I have seen firms, big firms, hire diversity coordinators to create the inclusion plan. And sometimes it's outside of them and doesn't strategically speak to how they have previously invested towards this endeavor or how they will continue to embed this. So it almost feels like a standalone thing that they do in order to transactionally acquire the contract. And sometimes it's just a one-off project that they do, depending on if the client is requiring it. So what does it mean to internalize it deeper into a cultural shift? But I don't know if this metric can even account for that. More like systemic approach.
I do that work, and what I'm doing is training the in-house person, because what I find is the majority of the primes do not have the in-house capacity to do that. And so WSDOT, for example, requires inclusion, key personnel, but most state agencies do not. The outcome of the project, whether it's an in-house or it's subbed out to a consultant, there isn't any data to show that one works better than the other. It's who has the expertise. And if you don't have the in-house expertise, then you have to contract it out.
Yeah, I do definitely agree. And I see the work happening.
Mm-hmm.
When that work is sort of outsourced, depending on who is building out that framework for the prime, will depend on how the depth and scale of the culture shift of the organization.
Yeah.
But how do we rely outside of just that individual diversity coordinator to more of a systems for long-term impact. And
We're using our good listening ears for each team as they report out.
Going back.
And then we'll give everyone
Different
maybe.
more conversation on that one.
thank you.
All right, welcome back. We're gonna go ahead and start with our online piece. Can you tell us what measure you chose and what metrics you came up with? We just need one reporter from online.
Vicky, did you want to report out for us?
I don't know what we finally have.
We weren't talking about no measures.
We had lots of good conversations. So
I know you did.
Yeah.
I thought that we came up with, we focused on increased state awarded contracts and spend.
Yes.
That was our focus
Okay,
area.
beautiful. Okay.
And then the metric that I think that we kind of came to was how many subcontractors or contractors have been awarded contracts
Okay.
and how many of them have inclusion plans.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yep.
That was one of the ones we had like 4 other ones, but
Okay.
that was one of the top ones that seemed to gain a lot of interest.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, online team. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and move to our internal one that has the same measure so that we can just keep that vibe going. I believe it was Cornelius. Oh, okay. So we talked last. I got it before. Okay. Porter, maybe you want to report out on, you all wrote down some metrics for increasing state work contracts and spend.
So setting contract goals, percentage of contract and the dollar amount of those contracts is important. Increased number of bids from MWBE. How do you want to add more to that?
Yeah, we were just thinking that if we remove discrimination of processes, that should hopefully help increase more bids. A good first step. And
Okay.
obviously then getting to more.
And I'm gonna change this MWB to all, because we're race and gender neutral, so to all small businesses. Yep. It's easy, yeah, it's easy. It's like there's too many people in now, but we got it.
On the minority and women.
No, we're looking at race and gender neutral right now, not race and gender conscious. Yes, so right now, we're just on race and gender neutral.
Okay. Why was something else?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not a group of women.
Thank you. I hear you.
Pre-solicitation times,
Allow for adequate solicitation times to
Okay. Oh my gosh, you're shorthand. Allow for an increase of solicitation time to increase competition. I mean, like, note that part of the benefit of you all being in this is to collaborate and build relationships. So I hope that everyone's building some communications and community and network, and you're swapping business cards. Okay, go ahead.
adequate and no experience required.
Okay.
Now, that's what I'm saying, is you got small business in the billions, depending on the definition. So, and then if you're gonna do that, then.
Everybody's in and nobody's out.
Minority business is kind of a sub-small business. Because small is $1 million bigger than what I find a lot of times.
So that's where we're going to get to.
Okay.
When the rate, if, I won't say when, if race and gender neutral measures heal, then we're going to move down the roadmap a little bit to race and gender conscious measures. And we'll be back at this conference again, talking specifically about minorities and women.
Back regarding the executive order, the government came out.
So what
Okay, well, I don't want to, I'm gonna be candid with you, because we have not been race and gender neutral in this state. We have been race, I don't mean to challenge the whole basis, but we are not a race and gender neutral. What is happening, the right wing and the quasi-Hitler people use that to cut us out. Gender neutral. We've never been gender and race neutral. But the advantage has been to the white male race. And women have been left out of that. So we've never been gender neutral. So my sense is I think we need to probably zip down where we've had the chronic problems in excluding OMWBEs and then move the other way and become gender neutral if we have to, once we kind of fill the dish up with a little of that non-gender neutral stuff.
I hear what he's saying. Let's say, get the race conscious, participation first.
Okay, I don't want to argue with you. The other one, the tax has to raise $3 million. That's, I think, get 100,000 signatures, which I didn't went to school on the front and back. Oh my God. Yeah. University of Wisconsin. That language. Yeah. I want to see something equitable, fair, inclusive, etc. Acting affirmatively to get your mess cleaned up that you laid out there all these years and call it gender neutral or whatever you have. But we need to go target some here and not buy into where they're going to go. The U.S. Supreme Court has kept refining and restraining and making it smaller and smaller as to what we can do. But the same damn U.S. Supreme Court, if I may say, and I do mean to say damn U.S. Supreme Court, the same damn U.S. Supreme Court, the speaker was telling you, not gonna be very long, that he's the one that says in the 14th Amendment, blacks can never, ever, okay, get the benefits of of created equal. And so that's what we're dealing with. We need to understand where we're coming from. We're not moving out of an area where we screwed up and doing contract orders with women. It's the fact that they've not happened ever been included. And when they're starting to get John Carlson and his team of witches, and that's what they are. Like man, they're not to this. Okay? I don't want to come into no Trump, like no soft lady. And so what they do is you gotta feel strong to act. Yeah. Don't feel strong, not gonna act strong. I can't go up, moderate my voice as if I just won 15 years ago. Here I am. Oh, I'm close to death. I'm just all the time.
Yeah, way too much energy.
Was part of winning. It was one of the suggestions of winning to have a son. The idea came from the need to reinvigorate what these changes are all about and how to implement. That was also instrumental when he worked in the governor, Dan Evans, who was the one who signed affirmative action into office in 1972. He was one of his advisors, directors in his office.
Thank you.
I think he said,
I'm pushing him like hell.
OMWBE.
I led the effort in the state of Washington to create the Office of Minority Women.
That's why he's so passionate.
George Smith.
So
George and Nate Mile. Nate was working for George. But I did 6 years of work, almost losing my life. I passed my house at least 4 or 5 times, sleeping, and it missed my driveway coming in was so late. All on pushing toward OMWBE. That's what drove me. I lived on a white man's plantation for 12 years of my life, for real, no. And this is enslavement 2.0. Here are the conditions. Right. Okay, you just keep it in the air, but conditions were unthinkable. You wouldn't have thought we were certain third world. And then when I came into the governor's office, appointed to the governor's office, I was in government before 72, but to the governor's office as a senior staffer. And then I look at the data, and Washington had been a territory for 39 years, a territory, and 92 years as a state, and had never done contracts with a single black company. Nowhere. But what was in the record was a Japanese gardening company. And that was it. and women couldn't get jobs because what happened, it was that husband doing the work, white, you know, I'm talking about the white women. Then when that husband died, the state was so discriminatory, the wife couldn't take the business over and run with it. And so she had to file for bankruptcy, go out of business and pay huge taxes. And that's the kind of thing that the state was doing. Okay, so I'm coming from the point of view, this thing is bloody. Bloody. When Gary Locke pulled 9801, I saw at least six black one of them. And Table 100. If I remember that number, Lexington Town, Stress Kill, Herb Tisdale, one of the most men I've ever known in my life. Came to me pleading for help. Sat with me these 3 hours in my office. I was pretty successful at that point. And then after a period of time, when Gary did that, hell, I had to file bankruptcy. And I had to kill a company that I started as a baby. One person, and we had 50 employees. We went to diversify. We couldn't diversify because Gary was pulling the rug out from under the damn fast. So this thing is bloody. This thing got death at the end of it. We need to get some changes that's gonna make certain difference.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Adequate, and, no increase in experience. So let's just think real quick. Well, I just want to explain what we meant here. There are people that are competent and they don't have 50 years of experience.
Correct. Yeah, okay.
And so really our focus shouldn't be so much of, oh, I got 30 contracts in the state. Say, oh, better job than that.
And that means the people in the pod stay in the pod, and the new people can't have a hard time getting in there.
Have someone who's been in the pod for 30 years. He's working for a guy that's only been doing it for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's working under the umbrella of the person who's only been in business.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Can we add,
Thank you so much.
significance of scope? Yeah, because see, here's what's happening. I just had a conversation with Sound Transit about this. They're measuring percentage, blah, 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 blah. But what's happening is you've got all of these staff log things that are happening, and it's really remedial work where people are coming in to meet those DBE requirements. Okay, but it's not significant scope. They need to be given work streams to small businesses, not just staff log.
Okay, I see what you're saying. All right, so, yes, go ahead.
So, again, Matt wasn't here when we first started this conversation. I think I put him as a friend as well. This is an equity summit, and you wrote up there standardized race and gender neutral measure.
Yeah.
It's an oxymoron. Like, it just doesn't feel like we're here. An equity summit by definition is supposed to be about driving change. What the governor said, what Dr. J said, it just doesn't align. We've been in here for all the time, and you know what I'm saying?
So let me tell you. So let me state that standardizing race and gender neutral measures is not a NEDA measure. We are on the governor's roadmap to diversity, equity, inclusion. It is the governor's intent that should our race and gender neutral measures fail, we actually go to race, gender, and conscious measures. But there is a whole roadmap. We'll make sure that we get that out to all of the entities so you can see how we're tracking. The first thing was the governor set the measure. Second part, it went through legal standards. The third thing, we did a disparity study to find out where are the deficiencies and how would our programs operate should there be a level playing field. Let's say it like that. The next step was to standardize race and gender neutral measures. So a couple steps underneath that, which lead to race, gender, and conscious measures. So note that we are doing it this way because it's the roadmap that the governor is outlining. It's not a NEDA measure. Governor measure.
But just overall, all of this comes back, when Dr. J took the position, she went to every agency and they had to report back.
Yeah.
So that was over a year and a half of reporting back. And her office put that whole aspect together. What was these agencies coming back and how did they measure certain things?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that they came back with, was like, we're not doing this right.
Yes.
All that was right.
And let me tell you that as WashDOT, we actually are on our own roadmap to diversity, and we started off on the roadmap with race and gender neutral measures and doing voluntary goals. After a certain amount of time passed, we did where we started at, How did we do it when we just said it's voluntary? No, they didn't respond as well as we wanted to. So you know, we use that data as a catalyst to now put conditions of award goals. Now you have to hit my small business goals in order to be awarded a contract. No more can you say I will voluntarily do it. But I had to start somewhere. We had, as an agency, we had to start somewhere and have a unit of measurement to justify why we're moving in the direction that we're moving in. So
How long did you pilot that for?
that's a good question, and I'll get back to you. Yes, no, I don't have the exact time frame.
Okay.
Measurements by definition have a timeline.
I don't have the time frame here,
Yeah.
So.
Like, I know you guys have done some good work over in DOT. I know that, but I don't have all the details. But what I'm concerned about is how long it takes how long is that road on that map?
And I think
You got to keep in mind, COVID will have killed us all before we get down there.
But one of the things that we're going to do next, as once we get through this kind of step in the process, know that our next step is we're going to start setting action items for agencies to follow around these metrics that you all have identified. So right now, we're just going to move forward and state the metrics so we can get to this process, so we can get to the action item process. And then we're going to report that out to the governor later on today. In half an hour. So we really got to keep it moving.
The reason why it got fast tracked is it got put up between the small cabinet of what if the regime changes? So that's why it's being moved so fast. So this way it could be put into law, put it into practice, and not be able to be moved if things change. That's how our country is right now. Now, the question is now.
So I want to keep us moving. We only have 30 minutes left. We are going to need a reporter to report out to the governor later. And we do need still time to set these action items. So on the reducing barriers for contractors, can I get a reporter for this team? Okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to speak into the mic?
Okay.
So folks can hear?
Yeah.
Okay, so just for context, the left side are some of the metrics we came up with, and the right side with the laundry list of barriers to entry. So we had to start here, right? And then kind of back into the metrics. So a couple things that we identified here: number of bids received, increased number of certified firms. This is going to resonate with what we were talking about over here. A few of the barriers that we had identified were the finances for small businesses. And we could go down a whole rabbit hole on that. So come tap us on the shoulder if you want to talk about that one. Insurance requirements, numbers of employees. This needs to be rethought. And so the way that we were thinking about it is to, as far as how to measure this, really deploying interviews of folks.
Yeah.
So you had talked about, 30 years, 100 years of experience, right? They put some of the most entry-level people on these projects, but they look good. They look really good on paper, right? We can get to the interview stage and start to get capability measurements, right? And some of those core competencies, then really interviewing the folks that are going to be doing the work. Yes. Okay. So getting a lot of head nods here. So I think this is probably one of our key metrics here. We talked about how the equity folks, and that is whatever that translates to for your agencies. These folks need to be a part of the conversation before contracting even hits the pipeline. Okay. Way at the beginning. And so we heard from some of the folks in our group that getting a signature, right? Actually having the equity person
have to
sign off. I've been included in this conversation. I have helped with scoping this project. I have been here to be able to speak into some of the equity parameters that we should be thinking about. And there's an actual signature on that thing before it ever even hits the rest of the pipeline, before it goes out for bid, right? So that, I thought that was a great one. And then, just timely payment. This goes back to the financials, and there's a rabbit hole there, but good stuff.
Yeah. I will say I am the signatory at my agency for all. I write my signature on a lot. But I understand the effectiveness of it. It doesn't leave out, it does not go out on the street without my concurrence.
Yeah.
I've looked at it, I've investigated it, I've said yes to give it my nod, and it is effective. It does. It means that something doesn't bypass my office. So, okay. Education and empowerment external. Sorry to cut your guys' time. You all got me thinking about you guys. So, to cut you all's time down, but if we could just get a brief report out here so we can move to our next one. Yeah.
So things we thought about were for education empowerment to increase mentorship, to provide support services for these small businesses, including advocacy.
Yes.
So if something goes wrong on the job site, they have someone that they can go to help them. Outreach to these businesses so that they know about these. Increasing their access to state agency staff, so they can also go to them for assistance. Having agency open houses where they can meet agency staff, but also meet each other and meet prime contractors. Access to resources, providing them with technical assistance and training.
Okay, wonderful. I love all of these. One of the fun parts of my job is growing the capacity of small businesses and getting to throw money at them to help them build. Like, I don't like to argue about goals. Like, this is the fun part of my job. So I really, really love this. Okay, education and empowerment internal. This one is near and dear to my heart. I'm internal people. So can I get a report out quickly for this one? So all right.
So the one that we felt really strongly with is that all staff and agencies engaged in contract and procurement 100% should be going through fair training.
Yes,
that should be across the board required. We really struggled with how to capture empowerment. One thing we were thinking was to track and measure agency policies that are informed by community feedback. I'm not sure what that would look like, but it would be really great if communities could actually say if those contract and policies are creating barriers. Like, there's no feedback right now in most agencies. And the big measure is, has participation increased, but it's kind of hard because those are so disconnected from policies. And then we were kind of thinking you could review contract incentives to eliminate ones that decrease small business participation, but that's really more on a policy line.
Decrease incentives that eliminate and decrease participation. It's like, I'm gonna get it on a t-shirt. Show up to meetings with that on there. Okay, so next step is.
Well, I'm just wondering, since we have 23 minutes to go until we're supposed to go live, I'm wondering if it would make sense just to pick one measurement and just walk it through and just add action items to it. And that's the one that we present instead of trying to do all 4 of them, and just considering the time and then the need to maybe practice in front of us and, before we go live. What'd you say?
May give more diversity.
I agree, but we don't have time.
Yeah.
We only have 22 minutes now until we go live. So I'm just wondering, maybe we just pick 2 measures and then walk down the action items for those.
Well, I
don't know, just trying to.
I think,
Well, some of them align, right? So
yes.
These 2 kind of cross each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of now taking those and then seeing how does those fit into those other measures too. So it goes back to what we were saying, beginning with the budget.
If you could choose okay. So yes, we will do that.
Yeah.
We'll kind of have this side of actually, because I think just to reduce down on confusion, I'm gonna give you 10 minutes. Each team is going to go back to their original team. You have 10 minutes to choose one metric and create one action item. That's it. 10 minutes. One metric that you think will have the highest impact, one action item.
Yeah, we have our.
That's it. Great. If you already got it.
What is ours? I would choose that capability one, and I would say the action item is to develop standardized interview criteria that you're gonna measure every single entity on. And
okay, you guys got it. Great.
No.
One metric that you think has the highest impact, potentially having impact, and one action item.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, so we need to think of one action item for our metric. And if you look at the Padlet, the link in the chat, there are the categories that we're supposed to be looking at. So if you look at the Padlet, the fourth column, increased data awarded contracts and spend, I have the metric there. And then there's a couple of categories that we need to create an action item for. So we just pick one of those. So the categories are leadership, operations and services, tribal government relationships, public communications and education, facility systems improvements. Anyway, there's like 6 different categories, but we just need to create an action item for one of those. Or does anyone just have an action item that they want to throw out there that we could?
Lenore, it's Irene. You know, your metric is the amount, which means the dollar amount, correct? On your metric.
I thought it was the number, but or do we
Well,
mean the
yeah,
dollar?
you need to put here the number and the dollar amount of subcontractors, because it's useless. You can say I awarded 100 contracts, but they only utilized 2. Does that make sense? So we need to revise this, please.
You can rewrite it.
Yeah.
It can't be just the dollars.
Yeah, it has to be the number and the dollar amount.
And the dollars. And that is actually a traditional measure that a lot of other jurisdictions have been using for years to measure this. It's not just the dollar utilization, it's the number of firms that are utilized. It's always been a pair that's gone in hand. I mean, that City of Seattle has used that number, that combo
Everywhere. Yeah, everywhere that's
decades.
being used. Yeah. Mhm.
Number that we're gonna give them, because it's
So the number and the dollar amount of subcontractors or contractors who have been awarded contracts that have been inclusion plans with the monitoring component, right?
Yeah.
we're just doing a baseline then, right? We're just trying to understand what it is for the first year or something, and then the next year, then you increase it.
Well, the goal is already out there. The goals are stipulated by statute and WAC. So the goals are there. It's an issue of have you made progress to those existing goals?
Okay. All right.
So the baseline is because probably most state agencies have never counted how many contracts either as a prime or as a sub have gone to WIMBYs.
And why, maybe I should explain as well, Vicky, why is it important to put the total number of subcontractors and the amount? For example, an excavation company can rake $2 million, but a supplier like me can only do as much as 1 million for a whole year for the state of Washington. See the difference? Right. And that excavation contract is only one time. Mine is a whole year. So that's why it's important to state the number of contracts and the dollar amounts.
Okay, that sounds good. So to move us forward with the action item then, is there any, anyone have any ideas for action items that we could, that kind of connect to that metric? Yeah, okay, we got 1 minute. Anyone have any action items that we could ask?
I think it should be, you know, stated in all contracting language. And on the procurement, you know, policy of each agency, this should be clear. This should be stated. Because how are you going to measure if it's not written somewhere?
Okay. So your suggestion would be for it to be stated in any kind of like procurement.
Yeah,
language.
in your procurement manual per agency, right?
Okay.
Right.
Any other ideas?
Yeah, that the firm selected has to report this information
Right.
as part of their contract.
There's bid submittal, their bid submittal, right?
Well, that, and if they win the contract, then it's part of their it's part of their monthly invoicing.
There, yeah. No, I actually, Vicky, that could be done with their sales reporting or.
That's true.
Yeah, it could be required. It's required on the contractor, reporting.
Yeah.
Usage report, right? It should be added on the submittal of, the, contractor on their usage report. And then on the contract, procurement, policy manual of every agency.
Okay, we're going back in here.
So we do have to be on time. So if I can get everyone's attention, please. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your attention. Sorry to rush you along. I love all this great networking and talking going along, but I just gotta focus this a little bit so we can keep it moving. Okay, good work. All right, education and empowerment. What was the one you chose?
I think require pair training for all agency staff.
Contract.
Okay, so your measure is education and empowerment internally. The metric is the required peer training for all agencies.
All agency staff.
Staff engaged in contracting and procurement.
And.
So for your action item, I guess we like, is the peer training already? I guess you got to develop it. It's gonna be so develop and then require. Okay.
You might need a small business to develop that training.
Okay, great work, team. How about external? What did you guys choose?
Outreach.
Outreach.
So they would develop an outreach plan, which may include access to resources, technical assistance, and having open houses.
Okay, so their measure was education and empowerment externally. That's around small business and contractors. So what they chose as their metric was that all agencies are required to have a small and diverse business outreach plan. And that outreach plan at minimum must require them to do, have access to resources for small businesses, technical assistance, maybe a fund or at least resources to get to the funds. And
Think they lost us.
I think they did. I think we got bounced out.
We got kicked out.
We're too rowdy.
But where's,
Oh, sorry, hold on. So Lenora's trying to get us back.
I know we're getting close to the end of the session.
Mm-hmm.
contract or the RFP, and we beat 20 to 25% of that score. So we're really putting your money where your mouth is. It's not about the lowest amount or experience. Like all of that is important, and your sustainability and environment plan, that's all important. But maybe a percentage of the RFP scored by someone in a equity position carries some weight, some serious weight. Let's throw our weight around. Okay, excellent. I love it. All right. Online.
Yeah, so we lost our connection.
Uh-oh.
I don't think they can hear me. Oh, you guys can hear me?
Yeah.
we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Yes?
We can hear only.
Well, the excellent part is like, you just
We can only hear.
I know.
Maybe signal.
Oh, they can't see me, but they can hear me. Okay,
Okay.
hold on. Okay,
There you are.
okay, I know it died. I have it charged. Okay, so Irene or Vicky, would you guys like to speak?
Well, Irene rattled some things off. So
can't hear you
Irene, you
guys.
go first and then
Come back to us,
if
please.
we miss
Okay,
anything, I'll
we'll come
chime in.
back.
How's
So,
that?
Next,
Okay.
we're going to do a report
So
out to the governor on our measures. Do I have a volunteer in the room who wouldn't mind reporting out to our governor?
I mean, I can if no one else is gonna volunteer.
Okay. Yeah. Oh.
You're welcome to, so.
Yeah, everyone's like, my voice is.
In a room or?
No, we'll be out front in the big room.
Here, which one?
I'll rewrite it. Or where you're each, yeah, or you can do your thing.
And then, let's go. We're now set to break back to the general session. Are we?
You guys figured it out?
Yeah.
Which, okay. Yeah. Did you have something, do you have it all written down?
I'm going to.
Okay.
I mean, I've been.
I thought you were plugged in, Mark. I don't know.
You didn't do that in your.
Can you
spare
try a
time.
different table? Can you make sure that they?
Okay. So I will write it out and then I think we all can return to the general session. If you all could be someplace at least or hang back in here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you all, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope that you all enjoyed yourselves today.
Yeah, one of those didn't work because it's finding each other. Maybe, you know what, let's switch. Maybe we have it switched because ours is the same. Oh, I mean, it's working now. Okay. I think it was whatever plug on that, they were like jacked up. So I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Can you guys hear me? I just can't hear you. Okay. So
Yeah, we can
I
hear
think
you.
We're finished.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We're going to be reporting out at 2:45.
Okay, so is this break time?
Someone could write
Thank you,
down, I
Lenora.
can't hear you. If someone could, in the chat, if you want to write down the action item, because I don't remember it, because I lost power on that, and I had it saved in my chat. So if you can type in the what we talked about, because I don't have it.
Okay.
We're taking a break.
Do you recall that measurement
And I
capture?
think there's a new link that you'll have to click on at 2:45 with the governor.
Click one.
Okay.
Yeah, you can
If
sign
you can,
off.
yeah, if you can leave us on so
I can't
Irene
hear
and I
you, but
can,
if you could use the chat.
yeah.
Sorry.
Irene,
Yeah.
Irene,
Yeah,
let's go through those action items.
Thank you, everybody.
I'll type if you speak.
Yeah, I,
Good, I think.
okay, our action item, that this metric should be included on the procurement manual of each
Okay.
agency.
Okay.
Actually, he's gonna be in NOLA this weekend.
able to share best
Oh, wow.
practices.
And I will be in NOLA at the event, so I will be probably.
talking about
Okay, on the procurement, solicitation.
No, their manual, yeah, it should
Yeah.
also be on the solicitation,
It's kind of hard
Okay.
to not get too crazy in NOLA, but
and it
they
should
put on a good
should
note.
be
Part of the
also
contract.
on the contractor vendor, maybe contractor / vendor sales performance report to the state.
Hopefully you can read this, okay?
And I'm gonna put in parentheses,
Can you mute your mic? Yes, I
invoice,
can.
because some of the other folks use the word invoice instead of sales, but it's.
Right,
it's
right,
basically that.
invoice, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I've got include on procurement manual, solicitation, and vendors / or contractors sales invoice report to the state.
Right, because as a supplier, we're required to submit our quarterly, usage report.
Right, and
So-
in construction, it's monthly.
Yes, and it's made public as well.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yeah. So the action item is that the action item, Lenora, if you can hear me, yeah, she's looking at it right now.
Can you see it now, Lenora?
Yeah. Does that work, Lenora?
That's a win.
Okay. There we go. So we've covered, it's so new people coming in, they see it in their manual, their process, their procedures. and they know what they're supposed to do, then, you know, you don't have to start all and reinvent the wheel every time you get somebody new coming
And
in.
you can't fudge the accountability.
That's right.
Measurements.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
it's written.
right. And so some of this would be incorporated into that peer training
Oh, yeah.
specific to supplier diversity that the other performance, so there'd be that intersect. You want to have intersects on all these.
Well, you know, at CPARB too, this has always been a problem, data collection. Now,
Yeah.
here's your data. You cannot finagle this.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand when they say, well, we don't know what we're doing. Well, how do you not know? Yeah. I mean, B2G now and all these other database systems that are being used for tracking, it's integrated to almost everybody's systems anymore. And there's other ones as well.
Yeah, and because the LNI2 reporting is not very clear, Vicky,
No.
there's some loopholes.
I know.
Right? So
Mhm.
I think this is very concrete because we do have problems of data collection to
Oh, yeah.
everybody listening. Data collection is, we want to know how much you spent. We want to know how much did you do that? Everybody's like playing, oh, I don't have enough information to report.
Exactly. And one of the things that kills me is this idea that the state negotiates contracts with vendors for credit card use.
Mhm, mhm.
And then, but don't include reporting. How do you not do that?
And there's more to that too. There's
Yeah.
more to that.
How do you negotiate that and not include that? I mean, and you, state agencies are the holders of all the money. So you get to call the shots if you want to.
Yeah, and I don't know where else do we put here. How much are we spending money on Amazon?
Oh, gosh.
Hey, Vicky,
Yeah.
when you talk about state contracts with like a, you know, purchase card vendor, are you
Mhm.
talking about the US Bank contract that we have?
Yes. See,
So,
yes.
we can get metrics now.
Yeah.
The problem is the metrics that US Bank goes by are not, they're not OMWBE metrics. They use Briggs and Bradford.
Nix
Dun and
codes too.
Bradford.
No,
So
Nix
it's-
codes. They do Nix
this-
codes.
Well, it's a self-certified kind of
So-
category that they do.
So why?
And it's certified by a vendor, but I
No.
mean, but it's not, it doesn't meet our state requirements for us to get credit for.
So
Yeah.
here's the question that you have to ask.
Vicky and I have been partners for a long time.
Okay, for this, for decades, what, 30 years, almost 30 years?
Well,
So,
she
at
has been my certification manager. I am the aggrieved party all the time in my contracts.
So here's the question you have to ask. The US Bank is making buco bucks off this thing.
Yes.
And yet they dictate the terms and conditions of your requirements. Why is that? Why would a government agency, any government agency,
Submit themselves.
anyone from the private sector to dictate their terms and conditions? I am a taxpayer. And now that I'm consulting, I pay taxes twice. I
Mhm.
pay it as a business owner. I pay it as an individual. I pay state taxes to the state for the revenue that I am able to generate. And I pay money into, and I know Irene's company does the same. And here's the thing is it's our money, but the farm has been given away. So if you collectively, the state, are the holders of the money, he who has the gold is king. And yet, too many times the crown has been given away at a very expensive rate. And this has been an ongoing challenge for decades. And it's because people don't want to change their behavior because it's the way we've always done it. So I had 42 years since I started my little journey with DEI. And I worked 25 years at the state, 15 at OMWBE, and 15 years at the city, sandwiched with the state in between. And I found out something very fascinating as the contracts division director for Seattle Public Utilities. I became the most popular person in the city with any contractor, vendor, or consultant professional services entity because they wanted to be in front of me because they wanted to get hired. Very powerful, those positions. And so I said, this is what I want. And I made a deal with my director. This is, if you don't talk to Vicky, you don't get to play. And so all of a sudden we went from utilization, and I'm going to use professional services as an example because it's engineering services. We started at 8% inclusion when I arrived. When I retired, we are at 22%. And since I retired out and I got the last data because I still have my buddies back at SPU, they're at 27% inclusion of women and minority engineering services. 6 firms are now primes. They're priming work. They're not subs. And the big thing that we did was we changed how we scored and what we scored. And that totally flipped a switch. The other piece we did was we said, this is what we have expectations of. And, you know, for those 8, whatever years I had at SPU, we never set any goals. We just said, go read 3980. 3980 basically says that when you select the most qualified firm team for your professional services, you're supposed to be reflecting availability of women businesses, minority businesses, and veteran businesses. And I said, we enforce 3980, which means our best value, best firms are going to be the folks that reflect availability. Your business, you figure out how you're going to do that. We're not going to tell you how to do your business, but that's our expectation. And we got it. It's actually not hard. It's not complicated. It's just basically people are empowered. They don't even know it. And they just need to exercise that power to create change. I will tell you, I'm not the smartest kid on the block, but if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's my 2 cents for the day. So are we going back to the main thing or are we disconnected from everybody else as a standalone? I'm
I don't
not
know.
sure.
I chatted with her and she didn't reply.
Okay. So we may be hanging out here because you and I were talking and typing. Irene.
Yeah, no, I think Ed is, I don't
Yeah,
know who else
I'm
is here.
still
I
on.
think everybody else is still here.
I think
Okay.
we have to leave this room and we
Okay.
have to go
Oh,
sign on to
and
the
check
other.
in there.
Okay.
Okay, check in
Yeah.
on the, how do
The
you
report
log
outline.
into the big one? Like the stream, because I was streaming all day.
Yeah, if you go back to the main menu,
Yeah.
if you just click on live stream, because I think the last
Yeah.
2 are just going to be live streams,
Yeah.
not sessions.
That's what I was
So-
doing. Right.
Yeah,
That's what I was doing since this morning.
Okay.
Nice
So,
talking with
see
you all.
later. Yep. Take care.
Well, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.